And welcome back to Jeff Koinange live here at Citizen Television. On the bench today, a great panel. We're talking about the year in review and in particular, all the latest news, including the Singapore question. Joining us right next to me, Mohammed Abdullahi is a fiery law student who doesn't take enemies, literally. Right next to him, former cabinet secretary under President Uhuru's administration, Cicely Kariuki. On the far end is Kipruto Arap Kirwa, former minister in former President Kibaki's government. And joining us live from our Ramogi studios in Kisumu, Dala, Reverend David Kodia. He's the Bishop ACK in Bondo. Mohammed, let me start with you. The Singapore question. The president keeps changing the dates of this achievement. What are your thoughts?
First, Jeff, thank you for having me. I'll just delve into the concept itself. Is it an ambitious one? Is it a timely one? I think firmly yes. I think for it to be a very ambitious one, that we want this country to go to the level Singapore is today, is an ambitious plan. How would we get there? In how long will we get there? Those are important, but I think peripheral questions. The important concept is, can we agree with the president that that is a destination we want this country to go to? Is that a level that we foresee this country can get to? Yes. But before we get there, there are also very important things that need to happen. Part of it is this blatant corruption cannot get us to Singapore. This country that is fragile because of political affiliations cannot get us to the Singapore way. However, I think it's an ambitious, good plan if we're to get there. How, when we will get there, are questions we can keep discussing and asking and refining.
Yeah. Yes. The president said today, Cicely, that we'll be halfway there, halfway to Singapore in 2026. Your thoughts?
2026 is in 2 weeks' time, Jeff. Correct. But first and foremost, nice to have you back alive. I'm very glad.
Thank you.
And thank you for having us as usual.
Yes.
It is platforms such as this that we interrogate what really we are being told out there, and are able to also carry a few Kenyans who have not had a chance of, being a little bit on the side of criticizing what ought to be a good vision. I want to agree that dreaming of going to vision is good. And they say every dream is valid. As to whether it is valid to the extent of talking about 2026, I think he's pushing the joke a little bit too far, for obvious reasons. The main anchor 50 years ago that got Singapore where it is today, and consistently, was a couple of things. But the most important one, and the one we are lacking as a country, is dealing with issues of corruption. Today, as of last year, African Development Bank has evidence that we are losing about 6 billion shillings every month to corruption, totaling to 194 billion Kenya shillings per year to corruption. That's huge if we look at where we are in terms of our budget. So unless and until we deal with matters of corruption decisively, then we'll continue dreaming of what we can do to be a Singapore. Number one. Number two, the next serious anchor around Singapore had to do with meritocracy. Talk about meritocracy today and just look at the ethnic-based conversations, nepotism, appointments, and stuff like that all over the place. And then you begin to see we really are a bit too far. And number three, in terms of Singapore, what they had to do 50 years ago was to allow institutions to operate with levels of independence that we know in the last 3 years we have deliberately weakened our institutions. Round figure, unless we talk about accountability, good governance, and simple good manners, we can dream, and dream beyond 2026. We can dream for the next decade and dream beyond that. As to whether we want to dream, is a good dream. As to whether it's achievable, it's been achieved. But we are lacking in all the ingredients that really got countries, not just Singapore, to develop.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Ruto, your thoughts. Is it achievable? Is it attainable? Is it a pipe dream?
Well, I get worried when we are dealing with the government that we have lost a lot of trust in it. We've lost a lot of trust given the fact that They have been making so many promises and they hardly achieve any. Possibly this is another dream for the re-election of the president, because the last election, his narrative was the hustler versus the dynasties. And you no longer hear about the hustlers. Even the hustler fund seems to have disappeared in the books of the government with a lot of debt that has not been able to be redeemed. But the most important issue is that let's ask ourselves, for Singapore to reach there, it took a lot of decisions to be made by the president at that particular time. And therefore, if you say zero tolerance to corruption, you yourself must be able to be above reproach. I remember the leader of Singapore at that time, I'm told they took a cruise into the deep sea. And he was telling them, let us take a cruise so that we are able to dream about this country better. He came back alone. This therefore means that the rest of the guys were left in the high seas. So he said, does he have the capacity to do that? And say those who are corrupt shall be left in the high seas. And if they were to do that, I'm sure he may not come back himself. So it worries me more because we don't want to lose our president in the high seas and cause another by-election. So I would rather we become modest about our dreams. And also dreams, Jeff, as you know, must be put in a blueprint, which is supposed to be the vision of the government. Remember the Kibaki dream of Vision 2030, he did not just announce it out of nowhere. It took a lot of professionals, a lot of us politicians, to go through a process of saying in terms of the security sector, what are the basic ingredients that we need to input for us to reach Vision 2030? Infrastructure, service industry, and many other aspects of government. It took us about 1 year before we came out with the Vision 2030. So we would want the president to be somebody who is able to marshal all the effort of government and the private sector. I remember those days we actually got professors even from Harvard, the late Kalestas Juma. He was one of us, and many other individuals who meant well for this country, for us to take a number of retreats, come back with Vision 2030, where each ministry was informed on what are the measurable deliverables that they can undertake for us to synergize our effort and get to Vision 2030. But somebody waking up and telling us we are going to Singapore, the best, I remember, was a vehicle that was on rigid frame of concrete wall. And is saying now we are going to Singapore, because you can be sure if a vehicle is on some kind of concrete mix, it cannot fly. So this issue of going to Singapore is a pipe dream. It is just another election gimmick. Yeah.
Reverend David Kodia, all the way from Kisumu, Dala. Reverend, we were talking about Singapore before with you, and you did say it's you were very diplomatic in your answer, and you didn't really answer the entire question. The question, is it attainable? Is it achievable? You know, your thoughts, you know, is it, can it happen in our lifetime?
Yes, Jeff, what I can say is that that big dream is achievable. It depends on the roadmap that we have, the desire to maintain that roadmap, the strategies that we put in place to ensure that whatever we are dreaming of is achievable. So for us to say that maybe in some couple of years we'll already be there, comparing ourselves with Singapore, there are certain mechanisms which drive the economy. One is honesty. Another one is the trust. If people do not trust what you are saying, that becomes a mirage. Then we have the honesty that people must, those who are driving our economy, controlling every sector of economic activity, they must adhere to certain principles, certain values, value system, which must lead us to making some decisive actions that can bear fruit. So to answer your question, Jeff, I would say it is achievable, But the current atmosphere that we have, current political atmosphere, current economic policies that we have in place, and the mannerisms that go with it, makes it difficult, actually, for us to achieve it. The level of corruption, you know, in Kenya, you talk of corruption, no one wants to hear what you are saying. They may say that you are from another planet, because corruption has become so entrenched in all government sector. You go to the judiciary, it is there, and they don't want to talk about it. They want to cover everything up. You go to all offices in the government, you will find glimpses of corruption everywhere. And no one is talking about it. If you stand up to talk about all these things, it's as if you are a stranger, talking to a rock that cannot respond to you.
Absolutely.
So unless the president put in place certain mechanisms that will safeguard the plundering of our economy, Kenya is rich enough. We have enormous resources. Just as I said earlier, we have a lot of mineral resources in this country. And if we can harness them, and then we control them from the plundering of those who are put in charge, we will be far away. So reaching the level of Singapore requires that we first of all soul search. Are we doing the right thing? From the top to bottom, from every sectors of economic activities, from government offices to parastotals, and then we talk of private sector, are we exercising the discipline that requires us to be there? Without that, it will be a big dream that will only require Daniel to interpret.
Yeah, okay, Reverend, that's great. Because after soul searching, maybe those responsible should read the book by the president that Kipruto mentioned, who ruled for 42 years, Lee Kuan Yew, and wrote the book From Third World to First. Maybe they should all be given a copy to see how Singapore became Singapore. But, if we can move on. National Infrastructure Fund. 5 trillion shillings. More than our national budget. And yet, according to a latest report, when it comes to food security, 1.2 million Kenyans are facing food security. Mohammed. Go on.
Again, Jeff, is it an ambitious and good dream? Yes. But of course, we still have a lot of questions about its setup and how it's going to be managed. Part of what came out of that cabinet dispatch was that it was going to be set up as a limited liability company. So you start to ask yourself, who are the shareholders going to be? Who are the directors going to be? Why set up a national infrastructure fund as a limited liability company, especially considering that the president says privatization proceeds is what will be going here. Privatization proceeds are national assets. They belong to this entire country. However, there are parts of it which I find to be very decent ideas, that for every 1 shilling that government assets contribute, they'll try and crowdfund in 10 other shillings from pension schemes and from the private sector and all of these other things. The idea here is that we'll try and replace our model of funding our infrastructure needs through debt by using this National Infrastructure Fund. Again, is it a possible conduit for stealing public resources? 110%. Is it a decent idea? 100%. But are the technicalities and the questions and the fears that Kenyans have against such funds and the setup of this fund valid? 100%.
Cicely.
You know, again, from a conceptual framework, it's good to think the manner in which the president and his team are thinking. Countries that have thought that way, but were disciplined enough to get to the destination, have landed. Now, there are a couple of questions that concern somebody. the rush gives you a lot of suspicion. You know, too many moving parts all at the same time. The infrastructure fund, the sovereign wealth fund, all at the same time, the same dispatch actually, coming very, very quickly after the privatization conversations and decisions that have given the CS for National Treasury absolute power to decide whether Jeff Limited today was a performing or non-performing state corporation. He'll sign on you and we'll deal with you, we'll privatize you. Too much. Without sufficient public participation, without carrying Kenyans who already are suffering from this deep trust deficit that the Reverend has talked about. In terms of then actually getting this whole big policy shift being executed via subsidiary legislation should concern every Kenyan, wherever they are. Yeah. It is so substantive in terms of a policy shift that it would have merited a little more public participation and a little more deep dive into the legal frameworks so that then, you know, it can inform the interventions that we'll be implementing going forward. Yeah. I want to be clear. No one, at least from where I sit, we are not objected to the grand idea. It is a good idea. But the gaps, I would have thought we needed to be a bit more methodical, or at least I think a bit more methodical. What became of the Hustler Fund? Why did it fail? Because it has failed. What has been the problem with the other funds that have been created, including the NYS Fund, for example, which lately is under an independent board? It is because even when we say it is a limited liability company with an independent board, I spoke about Singapore and weakening of institution. What guarantee or safeguard do we have that these funds are actually going to be independent? You know?
Yeah, keep it
between book and the actual implementation. We do not have any evidence that that has been the case, even when you've been told these are independent institutions, including Parliament, which ought to be on its feet as an independent institution.
Oh, yeah, right.
Jeff, you and I remember when the fuel levy was brought to town, there used to be some toll stations. When you're between here and Nakuru, you'll pay some toll fee. In Gilgil, then somewhere near Timboroa, you pay another one before you get to Kitale. And if you cross West Pokot, there will be another toll station. So they removed that because they wanted to synchronize so that as you consume fuel, you are able to pay something small. We started with 3 shillings to a litre. Now we are paying 25 shillings to a litre. And we removed the license, the road license, the whatever license we used to have. It's stuck on your vehicle. Today, it's only the insurance that you pay. And therefore, if you have the insurance and your vehicle is okay, you are good to go. But you'll have to go through certain measures if you want to travel fast from here to Syokimau, for example. You have to pay about 700 shillings, which means we are dealing with issues of double taxation. Now, we want to toll again from this place called from Mau Summit to Rironi. That's another expense that we're going to have. And you are using the public infrastructure, the land that belongs to all of us, because any road reserve belongs to you, belongs to me, almost in equal measure. Now, what you are doing to Kenyans, again, you are taking money from housing levy. Some of that money at times you put in infrastructure. You are taking money from all manner of things, including fuel levy. Then you want to tell them, you can trust us if you form a company that is limited to the extent of the misbehavior of the system of the day, and nobody shall interfere. And you want to bring us 5 trillion. And yet you are going against about 6 sections of the Constitution, because you are saying this money shall not go through Parliament. This money shall not be accounted. This money shall be free from controller of budget, Auditor General. What are you telling us? You want to create a private enterprise using public resources? The answer, that cannot happen. Yeah. And I don't know, I think the last time I knew, any law, any regulation is subordinate to the Constitution. And anything we are doing, whether it is now or in future, that is against any section of the Constitution, is null and void to the extent of the inconsistency with the Constitution. So what's happening is that the government of the day is trying to go private, and that private is just personal enterprise to profit a few elite in government under the expense of the public. This issue should have gone through our constitutional requirement, public participation, so that the public says, yes, we are willing to accept that. And that will mean they will have also been told about the sections of the constitutions. I may not have time to read all of them, but I've gone through. I'm not a lawyer, but I've gone through, because our constitution is written in normal English, which you and I can understand.
Correct.
It is against the 5 sections of the Constitution. And I want any lawyer or any financial expert to challenge me on that particular issue.
Absolutely. Reverend David Kodia, are we looking at misplaced priorities here?
Yes, Jeff. I think we have a problem, even of expenditure, when it comes to public activities which are supposed to be sponsored by the government. One thing which helps the economy to thrive is infrastructure. When road networks are good, when there is power everywhere, those are the first indicators of what economy means to the people. But as it is now, you realize that selling public institutions, like we talk of this other parastotals, in fact, it exposes the government in a very bad way. It means a failure of managing our resources. Because institutions like Kenya Ports Pipeline, institutions like Kenya Power and Lighting, institutions like Kenya Ports Authority, institutions like Kenya Airways, these are critical institutions that drive our economy. So government is left exposed with nothing to hold on other than expecting taxes from the people. But if you over-rely only on taxes from the people, there will come a time when people will say, we want to see evidence of tax utilization before we make any payment. And withdrawal of tax payment, even for 1 month, is enough to bring the government down. So it's just an issue of admitting that we need prudent management of our resources. And by putting the right people in the right places without considering where they come from. In that way, we'll change the scenario.
Absolutely. Thank you. Folks, I'm going to take a break now, come back and talk about the health sector. Whatever you call it, is still unstable. State of education, transition from 844 to 2633. Well, how's that going? The challenges there, the war on corruption, and also the state of the opposition, if there is one. Got a great bench for you today. The Year in Review 2025. Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag JK Live. JK Live takes a break. We'll be back with business news and sports, and then back to the bench in a moment.